The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, Tech Bites is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Rob Grimes, and welcome to another episode of Tech Bites. And today is sort of a special episode for me, and I'll explain why in a second. But I have Chris Fletcher on, who is the CEO and founder of Tech on Toast in the UK. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Rob. Welcome. Lovely to see you. It's a bit weird being on the other side of the coin. Normally I'm doing...
So you can welcome me on. I don't know whose podcast it is, because you have a series of podcasts, which we'll get into in a few minutes.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to see you again. And we've only met briefly before, but lovely to spend some more time with you.
Well, let me explain why I would say this is special, because I'm sure everybody says it's special when they talk to you. So, but I'll tell you why it's special for me, because we've been doing this podcast through the IFBTA for about 2 years now. And one of the things I found interesting is while the number one audience, if you're looking at those stats, is in North America, the number two audience is in the UK. And I'm not sure why that is. I just don't know. But, maybe it's because the IFBTA has had a chapter and we've been there for a while. I don't know. But anyway, you're in the UK. And you're something that I would say is something of a technology, hospitality, food service technology influencer over there. And why would I say that? Because I'm seeing you now at every event that we participate in. And then I have people say, hey, do you know Tech on Toast? So I said, they don't ask if I know you. They ask me if I know Tech on Toast. But anyway, so this is really a pleasure to have you on here, because I think we're going to have a great conversation. So let me just start out with, where did the name Tech on Toast come from?
Really, sitting in this room after the pandemic or during the pandemic, this is my garage, if you can see it, by my house. I've never built anything in my life, and I decided to build this because I had some time on my hands.
Well, I love the Maserati there.
Yeah, you see, it's just to the right, yeah. And it was just, I sat here thinking I wanted to have something that related to technology, obviously, and related back to hospitality. And at the time, I was the operations director at a company called Prime Minister. Got to say that carefully. Yep. Not Prime Minister, Prime Minister. Wouldn't want to be him. The Prime Minister. So I was trying to relate.
Politics.
Yeah, no politics. Trying to relate it to food items, and obviously pie, crust, bread, toast. And that's where I ended up. Weirdly, I didn't know at that point about toast in the US, right? So because they weren't in the UK.
Toast in the UK. But you're saying 2 years ago they were thinking about the UK. I would have asked you that question.
Yeah.
Because it was highly coincidental. I'm sure they love that idea.
Well, I think when you Google Tech on Toast, I think Toast are above me on Google, right? I think they're owning my space, as it would be. But hey ho, man.
Well, they're public and they can pay a lot for those search.
Yeah, very true. So that was the name. It was always meant to be fun, right? And I think part of the reason is because I spent my life in operations, which sure we'll talk about. And I've always had fun. It's been brilliant, a great industry to work in. And I didn't want to create my next career as something that was, a bit more corporate, a bit more sad, I suppose. So, yeah, it was a play on words, bit of fun, and then the rest is history, I suppose.
Wait, are you anticipating a next career?
No. I don't know. You never know. I might become one of these entrepreneurial type people, Rob. You never know. But at the moment,
you are.
I think I am, actually. For this year, I've realized that maybe I am. But we're just having fun. And I think as long as I'm educating and working next door to the operators and the restaurant owners, I think I'm happy. I don't ever want to leave that part of it.
You said that you've really been in hospitality your whole career. Now, as far as I can see back, because I do the normal LinkedIn thing here, I see Hard Rock Cafe on there.
Yeah.
And Hard Rock, actually, they're one of their directors of IT is one of our chapter chairs in Orlando. But so we know the Hard Rock people very well. But is that where the story starts, or is it before that?
No, we were before that. I'll be honest with you. When I started at Hard Rock, it changed what I thought about hospitality, because prior to that, I'd worked for some casual dining restaurants in the UK, Whitbread, who are a big company over here, and a company called Ask Restaurants, an Italian chain. But when I went to Hard Rock, they interviewed me, and Callum McPherson, who was the VP at the time for Europe, said to me, just asked me where I was from. I said Liverpool. He was immediately interested. And then he mentioned the Beatles and talked to me about the Beatles for about 45 minutes and then hired me on the spot. So it was a very weird introduction, but they are one of the only brands I've ever worked for who it does what it says on the tin. So, the name, the brand, everything, or the culture they believe in actually really happens within the business. No one leaves. It's an incredible business. And I only left because I had a young son and I could not do the late nights anymore. I did about 7 years there. But the best people I've ever worked for, and still hopefully good friends with a lot of them.
But before you went there, so that's sort of what changed your thinking and gave you the inspiration and the passion within the industry. But when you were working with the other restaurant groups, did you actually start as a career in hospitality management? Yeah. Did you go to school for it? Are you a chef?
I came out of, I went to university to do law. I did a year of law and realized that I wasn't very clever. So I shifted gears and went into a business hospitality degree. And part of that degree was to spend a year in a hotel in London. It used to be called Forte Crest. Rob, do you remember Forte?
I know them.
Forte Crest. So
Rocco Forte, right?
That's right. And good story here. Claudio, I think his name was Carlo was Rocco's grandson, and he was on the same selection day as me. He obviously got the job. So, but yeah, I spent a year down there working for those guys as part of my university placement, and it was I loved it. Just great fun in middle of London.
So you and I have a very common background, actually. Yeah, because I went to hospitality school, but. And I joke about this all the time. One of these days, I got to get a moving camera in here when I want to tell somebody about this. But at about 30 feet from me is a Bob's Big Boy statue, one of the 7-foot ones. And that's a restaurant chain here. And that statue's out there because I started my career as a Bob's Big Boy restaurant manager after going to hospitality school, and then ended up in hotels, and then in hotels learned systems, and that's, whatever. So that's how I got there. But we have a very common background from that. And also, by the way, I will, when we are done this, I will reach out to Kelly McPherson and tell her that Callum got a shout out on here, because Kelly, who was with Hard Rock also a long time ago, as a friend, I saw her last week actually at a conference, and I know Callum, so I will have to. And you probably know Laurie Ness.
Yeah, I know Laurie Ness. Yeah, and Callum. I mean, when you do see him or you see Kelly, he's probably the biggest inspiration in my career to date. So, I don't see him or speak to him much anymore. But if you ever see him, let him know he was.
Oh, I bet you will be soon. Because he was just gave him a shout out. So we're going to call that one out. All right. So we have the common background out there, and we get the idea that you were bored. It was COVID. You need to find some place to move your Maserati out and go ahead and build, in your garage, a studio. And you've really, and you are an entrepreneur. So you've started, Tech on Toast, and the inspiration behind that, or the, if somebody were to, if I sat next to you on a plane and before you bore me with a half an hour explanation, that you got like 30 seconds to just tell me, and then we got to move on. So what is Tech on Toast?
We help operators in the way they buy and simplify the way they buy and manage their hospitality technology. So we literally sit in between the operators and suppliers and support them in the way they educate around technology and then buy and use it. There you go. 30 seconds. It's getting better.
Hey, that's pretty good. I wasn't expecting it that short. So, okay. So in doing that, but you're not selling technology. No. You're not, taking fees in it. You're really acting as a service to the industry.
Yeah, we're educators. That's the way we like to see, because we think that there's a big gap in the industry around where operations, they're so busy, right? You know this, you've done it, I've done it. You are not focused on the technology. If you are, then there's a problem with the technology. You're focused on the food and the people. That's the most important thing.
Well, we say that, you don't do technology for technology's sake, but it enables all the areas.
100%.
But I will tell you that some of the entrepreneurs and people that I see from time to time, you wonder how they came up with the technology in the first place. I always say, what's the inspiration, right? So what's the inspiration behind it? And you get these interesting answers. I was sitting at a bar and I thought it's like, okay, how's that work? How's that going to fit in? Well, it's one of those things, but those are the things that you see. So since you're out there really educating, putting people together, there's a lot of subjects that come up over the last year. So if we look back over the last year, what do you think? What are the main things that people are asking you, or what are the key subjects?
Number one at the top, and always will be, is integration. So the fact that all of this technology, which has now flooded the industry, does or does not integrate together, and it causes absolute headaches for the operators. And I think the tech community really understand this and want to help fix it. But there's a real problem out there with a lot of legacy technology, so a lot of older tech that doesn't integrate into the new tech, and they all want their data in one place. Yada, yada, yada. That goes on forever. That's number one. Number two this year has been AI. I mean, literally, if I get asked...
I thought you were going to say that number one.
Oh, no. I put that number 2 thoroughly because I don't think whilst it's here, I don't think it's having the impact that it will have next year. I think next year will be very different. But particularly integrations, and AI might solve a lot of the problems with integrations as well, potentially, with what we do with bots and whatnot. But integrations has been, if I ask the first 6 months of this year, that's all we spoke about, just helping people. We call it untangling your tech. We help people untangle the mess they're in, and then getting the right partners to kind of
Well,
take
it really sort of starts by having them, look, if you follow an operations first piece, which is what you said, they need to focus on operations, not technology. Yeah. Untangling the tech is understanding what they have. And a lot of times people just don't understand what they have. And it seems like a lot of times people have technology that they don't call technology. And I always find that if you're trying to say, well, what's in your tech budget or something, and it's very interesting what they include or what they don't, and they don't always include all their people in there. So, do you think that there is a end in sight for untangling the tech and the integration pieces as we move forward? Is there an end in sight or a solution that's coming? Or is it just going to happen organically because all the solutions are in the cloud and they're just all going to, centralize on another one?
Rob, I think it's like social media and the internet when it first came along, that everyone was like, oh, the internet won't work. Who's going to use that? And I think it took time, right? It took 10 years probably for people to really embrace websites, internet, email, all that kind of stuff. I'm old enough to remember that. And I think when you look at technology and hospitality, you've got to think of the journey we've got to go on across. You've already mentioned hotels, restaurants, food service, forecourts. Think of all the different ways you can engage with a customer. And so I do think there's solutions out there right now that can help, but that doesn't help a site with a group with 1,000 sites, right, who have to untangle that mess. That's a huge job. It can take years. So I think there's a bit of time ahead of us to kind of put changes in, but the technology is certainly there now to enable people to really kind of have clean.
Well, and people are writing technology now. I mean, some of the new POS systems and things are written on platforms that the older systems weren't written on. It's funny because when I think about integration, I also think about the online ordering and the delivery systems. If anything, they might have helped to move this thing along, because I think that the POS guys totally missed the boat on online ordering when it first happened.
Yeah.
And before you knew it, you had 30 different companies that were doing online ordering, in at least here in the US you did. And then you had those people internationally as well. And I once sat on a panel with CEOs of different POS companies. They said, you know what? We missed the boat. That's point of sale. And so now they catch up. But now those online ordering had to be integrated. And, it has to be parts, and it has to be integrated now the other way because COVID got the delivery going. So, but that was a newer technology that might have helped to solve the solution.
Yeah, and I worked before I started Tech on Toast. I was actually working at DeliverEct for like 4 months. I didn't stay there for long.
You worked for Zong.
Yeah, that's right. Zong's a great guy. So actually, Jan, one of the other founders, was my direct boss, but I've known Zong for a while. I kind of bought product off him. But Zong sees POS.
But he came from point of sale.
Yeah, he did. He built Lightspeed pretty much.
Lightspeed.
Yeah. So, and I think he saw down the road what no one else saw, right? He's a visionary. I really believe that these guys saw what was coming and they went first. And now in the UK, especially, they're leaders in that market. And I know he's in the States now trying to do the same thing over there. But it was really interesting working there at that time because they were looking down the road. They're way past where we're at now. They're already thinking about 2 years ahead. So I always look to them when I'm looking at what might happen next, and they're moving into really big retail, grocery. They're kind of landing there because I think that.
Well, you have said, by the way, but that's one industry. I sat on a panel with him a couple of years ago at a C-store conference because the C-stores are starting to realize that once they get EV in and they get rid of the gas pumps, you mentioned forecourts, so I sort of understand and speak that language a little bit. Got it. I got it. We're not dead. People figure it out. But anyway, we talked about this because the number one opportunity with all those thousands of locations are go ahead and bring in fast casual or bring in QSR, into those segments. So they're going to food service. So all of a sudden you've got to match retail systems with food service systems.
Yeah.
And so that's the opportunity.
And you can see it happening already. A good friend of mine is their GM of UK and Europe, Joe, and you can see them already putting some, making some big movements in that space. So yeah, it's super exciting. Hopefully there's not an end to tech. I love tech. I think it's great, especially if it's used in the right way. It just enables people to do a better job, but it's not as easy as I say it. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes on. Project management and change management in the hospitality industry, I think, is hard work because there's a deskless community who are working really hard behind the scenes to impress the customer, deliver great food, deliver whatever the product
Well,
might
listen,
be.
we're going to take a break in a minute, but before we do, I just want I'm only saying it right now because I want to keep the subject short, right? Because I could do it later and it'd be the whole rest of the second half. AI.
Yes.
So, I actually, I'm tired. I don't really need to hear about it because I have been around as well to know that it's just a new name, a long time ago, rules-based systems. And, we were just coming up with these things. To me, it's just a new way. My feeling is we really shouldn't actually be talking about it because it's actually should just be embedded in the technologies that we're using. That when you query, how to do something or why is my food cost up, it's just the next generation, or solving a problem, or taking a call. It's just really the same thing.
I think you used the word inquiry then, right? And there's this confusion over here definitely around an inquiry, AI, and automation. And I think people just lump it all on AI because, as in the people who don't understand properly, and it's not their fault. It's like, as you said, it's a new thing. And I think, and especially in the people space within hospitality, helping employees find information really quickly, recipes, holidays, rotas, schedules, whatever.
You remember Ask Jeeves?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I know you work for Ask, the Italian restaurant. Not the same thing. Got that? But you see, people forget that existed in the early days. So it's nothing new. It's just that the database and where the information and the speed of coming up with the answers and then applying some thinking to it, artificial intelligence to it, to be able to come up with answers not based on rules, right, which is what it used to be. So it's really nothing new, but maybe the reason why people are so focused on the inquiries on and querying things is because we've been taught by Google and to Google it, to go look it up. So that is a natural thing that we do.
And I think the one thing I would say on all of this, that the data, there's no point having AI or implementing chatbots or anything like that in your business if your data isn't clean. So if you haven't got great data with all your systems like all tallied up together and they're producing really clean data, because ChatGPT, for instance, will hallucinate, it will make stuff up. So if you're allowing that within your business, that's really dangerous. I know a story about an airline that recently gave away a load of free flights because ChatGPT just made it up as a loyalty reward. Because they weren't controlling the inquiries and actually they were letting it think on its own. So there's a lot of control and a lot of data cleansing to be done before it really gives us great impact and lets those inquiries you're talking about become safe. So yeah, it's I think, again, another journey, but it lives within.
No, but I would agree with that. But, I try to steer the conversations away from AI, and I just pretty much am thinking that it's going to be there anyway, but it should be embedded. We really shouldn't be thinking about it. But if you want to know how I know where it really fits, I go to a show like the Hospitality Tech Expo a few weeks ago, or last month, where I saw you, or I go to NRF in New York or FS Tech or something like that, and I go look up first at the aisles. What's above the aisles? What are the headers, the sections, right? Okay, that's step one. That tells me what they're showing. But then I look as I walk past the booths, and I find that the number of booths that actually have the words AI in them now are less and less. They're not advertised. It used to be, by the way, big data analytics. I every year I want to know what the buzz and the theme is, so I just go read the signage, right? And I look at the sessions, and I'm seeing less people playing it up because I think there's an expectation it's going to be in your application.
Yeah. And as we said, it's an education piece from the operator side. They don't need to. They're already using AI in most of their products, I would imagine. There's most of their products, they pause labor, whatever, scheduling. It's doing its job in there already. I think where we're seeing a movement here is these bots, where they're creating their own bots internally within companies. So Pizza Pilgrims, who are a great brand over here, have something called Joshua, which basically collates all of their people information. And the teams inquire through it, so it's all in one place, and it's giving them great engagement. That's an example of what is starting to happen over here.
You see people putting names on the applications, because I had some. Oh, it came out this week. Bojangles Chicken here has named their voice AI drive-through. They gave it a name. It has a voice, but it's also talking in the culture of the company and handling things. And then, I talk with the people at Big Chicken, Shaquille O'Neal's company, and, they're putting same thing, they're looking at that. So it's really something behind the scenes. So why don't we just take a break for a minute?
Sure.
And then, I want to really talk about the market and where, where you see, the tech is going and sort of compare notes on that.
Yeah, sure. 100%.
So we'll come back in just a minute and then we'll go continue on with Chris Fletcher of Tech on Toast in the UK.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
So we're back on the Tech Bites podcast, and I'm Rob Grimes, and I'm here with Chris Fletcher, who's with Tech on Toast in the UK. And we've spent the first half actually talking about, just some general themes, understanding what Tech on Toast is and their positioning of being an information education source, and really helping people to bridge that gap and understand technology. And we've also talked about that number one discussion point, surprise, is actually not AI, it's integration, which, by the way, has been a discussion point for a long time. But, so it occurs to me that there may be no better person for me to have this conversation with right now, because we are approaching the end of the year. And I see so many different podcasts and newsletters and blogs about what to expect in technology in 2025, right?
Yes.
And I guess everybody's got to do their annual end of year. I choose, by the way, to start the year with that by going to CES, and then I go to NRF. So in the first 2 weeks, you can figure out what the rest of the year is going to look like. However, so we just spent some time at a tech show. You're out there hosting and talking to people. So if we're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards. What is going to be the discussion point next year?
I think if rather than what, who, I think it might be. So I think the people space. So if you go back to the 90s, marketers didn't have CRMs, they didn't have loyalty programs, they just kind of lived off Excel, right, and kind of banged the phones. And I think now you look at the space, the marketing space,
they had postcards.
Yeah, I mean, actually,
on the table.
Don't knock them; they were great, actually. But I'm old school. But now you look at the people space, and actually that hasn't been developed in terms of technology or looked after or looked at the UX of it for an employee. I think for a very long time, and I think for what I see from customers coming into the marketplace and people I speak to, and matching with the operator wants and needs, they really want some great UX for their employees. They want them to find information quickly, engage with them when they need to around surveys and whatever it might be. So I'm super excited about scheduling engage comms, because I don't know if the Meta workplace platform will close in 2026. So there's 500,000 users in the UK on that platform right now. So they're all looking for new homes to go to. So it's quite an exciting time in that space. And I think the first quarter will be dominated by that. After that, I think there might be a bit of a shift in POS. I don't know. I'm kind of looking down the road a little bit. But as you said in the first half, POS is becoming very competitive. There are some big players, and I think there might be some consolidation and change there as we head through the second half of the year.
Okay, so that's that. So first of all, you didn't really say labor; you said people.
Yes.
In here, so I think that's important, because what you're really talking about is the interaction with people.
Exactly.
Labor is more of a function, right?
Yeah. Labor is scheduling, and an output, right? An output of the people's effort. Whereas I think, and Callum taught me that, but I think that actually around the people space, so learning and development, engagement, reward, scheduling is in there, I suppose, holidays, all that kind of stuff, benefits. But I think...
Well, that's a function. That's a process. It's an application. But people, you actually have to communicate with people, and you have to be able to anticipate and take care of their needs, but if you're using a machine to help do it, then it becomes a lot more complicated.
Yeah. And
because you lose the one-on-one, and you lose their enthusiasm, for being with you. You're no different, right?
And the challenge, the retention rates in the UK, I'm sure are similar to the States in terms of, actually, it's probably better in the States, but in the UK, you're looking at an average of 120%. You turn your team. So 1.2 teams a year, 1.2 times a year, you'll turn your team. So communicating with them is absolutely crucial. And some of them are so big, they're going to have to use some kind of technology. But you mentioned before about culture, the way the drive-through is talking to its customers, saying, using their language, using their kind of, their, whatever matters to them inside them in terms of their culture. We've got to do that as well through the people space. Make sure that we're engaging with our people, but in a way that they would engage with us if they met you, the human, or you, the area manager. So it's definitely not easy, but I 100% see that as a big shift in the first quarter.
So if we focus on the second topic that you just brought up, and by the way, you said POS, I'll say EPOS.
Yeah.
How about that, right? I told you, I can speak English,
I always get, is EPOS you guys? I always get confused. I don't know if I'm being American or not.
We do not do EPOS on our side. It's POS, but we do. But I get it. But also, there's always confusion on what exactly that is. You know what? It's funny because as you think about it, I was about to say that there are two other uses of the word POS or POS in the U.S. One is, your point of service, which is, putting chewing gum and putting candies at the checkout counter, as you go through a grocery, right? So the point of service. And then the other one is its same name for a credit card processing machine.
Yeah.
And as that thought was going through my head, the question I actually was going to ask you has to do with, well, how is that landscape changing when you see how many companies in the EPOS business are being bought by credit card processing companies?
Yes.
Which also use the term POS, payment,
yeah.
Right. So how is that where the change is going to be? Because they're changing that landscape by tying the two together, or are there other areas?
No. I think it starts with payments because in the UK and probably globally soon, Dojo, who were Payment Sense, are making some big waves, and they're really interesting. Then you've got Toast, obviously, and Lightspeed over here, who have their own white labeled payments.
Well, you got Square, who's in it, and then you got Shift4 that here in the US that owns 6 different POS companies.
SkyTab, is that right? Shift4.
Yes, that's them. That's them, and they were there.
Yeah, and I think they're coming over here in a big way.
They are there.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I think, for me, it's almost like a race to the bottom, unfortunately, that on rates, on payment rate, that how competitive can it get before it becomes silly and unsustainable. But I think I always look from the operator point of view, how can they get a great deal, great technology, and get this seamless payment experience, which we've always hated, right? No one likes paying at a restaurant. It's always been clunky. And I think finally we're seeing a place where, with people like Toast or Lightspeed, where they're going through that and it's all in one. It's all one process.
Well, I do think, though, that so that's interesting because you have the all-in-one versus best of breed.
Yes.
And so while you may see, 150 different integration, there's the integration piece, but 150 integrations, because you got to do it because not everybody's going to replace everything all at once. So you make that choice. Then you have the choices in whether you have to use the hardware or not, whether that's separate. But then payments, I think over time, I'm not sure what's going to happen because we're going to probably see more and more systems being payment driven. I know even for the IFBTA, we have a membership system that we chose, but you have to use the credit card processing through them. And if that model happens for loyalty systems, for point of sale, for back office, if it goes that way, whose system are you choosing to use?
Yeah.
So unless you're using it all in one. So I'm predicting that over time, that's actually going to be broken out, that it will be an option.
I think it's in a place for change. That's the one thing we know for sure, because it's becoming so competitive. And as you say, a lot of the EPOS or POS guys are moving that way. So that, and they're starting to, and I know of another one that I can't really name, but they are in talks to do that as well. So I think it will become probably 4 or 5 big players in that space pretty quickly.
Well, even the traditional, older EPOS players, have added the option to do payments. Payments is just so interesting. I mean, this morning, on my way in, I was listening and they were talking about Bitcoin hitting, a high, and they were talking about that there's no value, there's no place to use it yet. It's, I think they said $100,000. And if you in 2019 or something, you invested, it was like 10 cents or something. But, it's just amazing because that is a new currency that some restaurants got in early, but then they got out. But payment methods you can't stay on top of, and it's the consumer that is driving how they want to pay, what they want to pay. You guys are ahead of North America because you go a lot more cashless than we do.
I think we're nearly there. Yeah, 100% cashless.
But you also have more data security and a number of things there. So from what you saw, I got to walk around the Hospitality Tech Expo, but I also go a lot of different things. Is there something that you saw in technology this year, maybe at an operator, or from a supplier, without getting into the brand, but is there something that you said, aha, I wasn't expecting that, something really gets you excited?
So Hawksmoor, a great brand over here, and I think there's one in New York, right? I think they've got one in New York, and they do this surprise and delight. Emma King was talking about surprise and delight in their restaurants, where they do some really great stuff. Where my friend there went for their anniversary dinner, and they ended up giving them a wine tasting downstairs just because they noticed them through the CRM and brought them in and looked after them. Why I refer to that is because something that's coming, and I saw a tech partner doing the other day, is this tokenizing loyalty. So when they come in and pay with your card, it triggers something within the building. Somebody knows that it's you that's come in, you that's paid, and then surprise and delight happens. I think that the loyalty programs of the points and the scales and the different tiers may suddenly start to drown out in the more premium locations where you can really start doing this really cool surprise and delight. Hard Rock, I would imagine, would be amazing at doing that if they wanted to do it. That kind of just rocking up and doing something cool at your table, So that's something I've seen nearly built, and I've seen it in some places working.
The interesting thing about that is our industry in the restaurant industry has always been slow on loyalty because we never could really know who our customer was.
Yeah.
But as soon as we started doing online ordering, we all of a sudden know who they are. And I think that COVID probably drove that thing much quicker to start to now directly connect with your customers that are out there, but also some of the newer technologies where people are opting in. I go into a store, it knows I'm there because my phone has instantly registered, into the network. That unlike airlines and gambling and hotels where they have to know who is there by law, we didn't always have to know, but that maybe is the greatest opportunity, for us, to focus on loyalty and
100%, and it's much easier to lose a customer than it is to win one, right? And I spent my career trying to win new ones. It's so hard to acquire. It's expensive to acquire a new customer, but to lose one. So keeping your loyal customers is. Raving Fans, I don't know if you've read that book, but I learned a lot from Raving Fans at Hard Rock when we talked about all the time, just keep your customers. They will grow with you and they'll bring their friends, but just don't lose them. And I think tech needs to really listen to that and understand that actually we don't need to acquire lots of new ones. We really just want to keep our really loyal ones, and they will bring their friends and family along as well.
What about new and interesting locations for operations? I mean, I see people, some are scaling down their operations, some are doing pickup only, or, the ghost kitchen thing. We don't really actually talk about that anymore. We talk about dark kitchens.
Yes.
Using a facility that's there. A lot of people still don't understand that. And we do talk about virtual brands, but we also see a lot of brands appearing. Some are testing vending machines, that are basically freshly cooked, not necessarily fresh food, but freshly cooked. We see grocery stores, we see non-traditional locations like the forecourts and things like that. So
I think we're behind you. I think we're behind definitely on vending. We are. I know it's, if you look at some of the concert venues and some of the high footfall theme parks, stuff like that, I think we see some of it happening there, but where people are franchising a lot more than they used to. So some of the high street brands, you'd understand, in the UK, we don't have huge franchises like you got. Obviously we have McDonald's and the KFCs of this world, but beneath that, there's a huge gap. And then you go down to this, what we would call mid-market. So anywhere between 20 to 50 sites, which are,
right.
And they're discovering grocery again after COVID, discovering that they can push their products through grocery in the top 4 supermarkets. And then the same through forecourts or whatever your petrol stations, whatever you guys refer to them. Yeah. So same through there, where we're starting to see these franchise elements of their business pop up. But delivery's still going, and some of the big shifts are to people like Boots, who are our big kind of pharmaceutical retailer.
Boots the chemist.
Yeah, Boots the chemist. So those guys, they're starting to see a crossover, as you mentioned right at the start of this podcast, where you've got food service and, in this case, retail banging their heads together and finding a good place where you can have a toothbrush and a KFC
And a
in your
sandwich.
basket. Yeah, and they're going
That's
multi-brand as
good. You
well.
get the sandwich, then you can go ahead and brush your teeth afterwards.
Well, that must be the reason, right? But that kind of
I'm
partnership
going to
is
have to look at the placement of where they put the toothbrushes in the sandwiches. That will tell you the answer to that question.
Yeah, it really would. It really would. But if I've just made that up, that's great, and you're welcome. But you start seeing those partnerships going more and more. The industry obviously shook by COVID, but experiential dining over here and competitive socializing still booming. In fact, competitive socializing is doing really well. Flight Club, people like that.
Absolutely. It's funny because experiential is sort of one of those interesting things. So I was doing some research in this, and I went out for my birthday last year to a pop-up Le Petit Chef, which is done all over the world, and it was at the Marriott at Times Square. And you have the hologram chef bringing stuff on the plate, then they bring the food out. Well, that's a pop-up that's done all over the world. However, I was researching this. At the time, I was looking at holograms and changing the experience. And I don't know what it is, but there were 3 or 4 concepts right before COVID that were in London that would change how the room looked, and you think you're underneath the sea, or they have a train bringing the food out. And these were experiences. There were also the ones where there was a pop-up concept that was doing 3D printing of food there, which I thought interesting. I'm thinking, like, why the UK? I mean, is there an answer to this? Like,
No,
why do they all seem to be there?
And I don't even know if they're here anymore. But Maragame,
They aren't. They shut down during COVID,
okay.
But I was following it.
No, but Maragame, for instance, in their Liverpool Street site in the centre of London, have that wall, right? They have a wall which is a digital wall which changes scenery while you're sitting in there. So some of them have bought into it. I think in the UK, we're pretty, we're quite traditional, right? Depending, especially when you get out of London into the regions, it's pretty, God, it was not much change happened in the last 5-10 years, right? It's much slower. And I don't know if it's the same in the States when you move from state to state, that if you see that real change in the way that people behave around how they treat food and how they want to hang out with their community. But it's definitely, London is always the focal point for everything.
But I'm talking about the UK in general. I had this conversation with somebody the other day because they're with Chipotle here, but they spent time working with Apple in the UK. And I said, it's interesting. In the early days, when Microsoft came over to the US, and started in the retail business and in the food service, IBM as well, those people all came out of the UK labs. And I'm not sure why that is, but that's where the retail hub was for them. And they were and so they were all, British were running those divisions here in the US as they were building up retail and food service. So there's obviously something to it. And I'm not sure. And by the way, I should point out, and I forget that you're going to know this in a second, but 10, 15 years ago, and the restaurant's still there, the Japanese restaurant where they beamed down from the ceiling Chelsea. I keep thinking it's not Izumi. It's and then they created a POS system, which I don't think they're still selling. But I would take people there because you could also do the kitchen cam and order a cab.
Yeah.
And I thought
you're gonna have to edit it and put it back in afterwards. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, but
no. But I'm just saying that's an example.
I think there's some agility in the UK that you probably don't have in other countries. I think because of the way that because hospitality is so ingrained in some communities, you can be quite agile and build something quite quick and do something quite different without upsetting the apple cart, as it may be. But I don't know why. Maybe we're just a bunch of really creative people.
Well, that could be. So, a last question for you, and then I'm going to figure out the next time we get to hang out somewhere together, because other than a trade show, because that's the worst time, but maybe to go do a tech tour either in the US or in the UK, would be sort of interesting to do together. But since it is the holiday season coming up, and since you love technology, let's forget about the industry for a minute here. So if I have to buy you a technology present that's just on your wish list of something you've seen and you really, just would love to have, what is it?
Oh God, that's going to test me now, because I have everything. Like I'm an Apple fan, right? So I'm not Android, I'm Apple, and they make you buy their products, don't they? You can't buy anything else. I'd love I've seen this ring that's come out recently. Have you seen the ring?
Sure.
I'd love that. Does it have to be? Could it be hospitality related, or can it be anything?
No, I said anything. I didn't ask you. I'm not asking buy something for you.
I know. Do you know what I'd also like? I don't know if you can call this technology. I'd love a drone, Rob. I'd really like a drone. I've been watching. I've got a guy on YouTube I watch who does some incredible footage across Scotland, across the Highlands. He drives this drone around. It looks fantastic, and I'd love to.
We're talking. So just to be clear, we're talking about a flying drone, or are we talking about a drone? Not necessarily flying.
No, flying drone with a super camera on it, so I can create some great content. Because I live on the coast of Wales, where the surf is really good, and I can kind of send my drone down the beach there for a couple of miles and just create some brilliant footage, put some music over it, and then that's my.
Well, I've noticed on when I watch movies or I watch TV programs, and they're taking those shots, and I'll sit there and I'll go, in the old days, I don't know how they took that shot, but I know today they probably have a drone that's just got a camera following the car and doing those things that it's just amazing. I never got into the drone thing. And by the way, my advice to you is get off of Apple if you really want the good technology, because those rings are out there. Google, actually, not Google, Samsung has the newest rings. And also, I'm still waiting to see Apple come out with that folding phone.
Rob, honestly, yesterday on the train, I was coming home and there's a guy sitting to my left from London, and he had that phone. He had the screen, the fold-out screen.
This is version 6.
Yeah.
6, right? I started on version 2.
I said, is there no crease in it? Does it not and it was amazing, the quality, but I can't get off Apple. I don't know what it is. They have me.
So here's, I've got to give you the solution to it. And by the way, some people, they make fun of me. I tell people, by the way, you choose the technology based on what you want to run on it.
Yeah.
So when somebody says I need an iPad-based POS, I said, you need a tablet-based POS. Let's talk about what it is that you want to put on it, because maybe iPad is the best thing. So I just remove that. I say it's how you want to use it. If you're doing entertainment, so that's why people do that. But so I've seen the new Huawei triple screen. I tried to get one a few weeks ago when I was in Singapore, but it's not out there yet. But you should look that up, because Samsung
when
has
you
one of those.
Triple screen, you mean like 3 of these, like stacked?
Yeah. Just when we get off the phone, when we get off the podcast, go ahead and just look up Huawei Mate XT, or go ahead and look up. You can go ahead and look up Samsung Tri-Screen, and you'll see both. Samsung hasn't come out yet. Huawei is out. However, when I look at things like that, I say, okay, can I use that now as an order-taking tablet? Can I use that as can I do because I always apply it to the industry, even though I want one for myself. So I think that there's opportunity there. But I think over time, and a lot of people argue this with me, that at the end of the day, I've started seeing a lot of devices that can run iOS, they can run Android, and you choose what you want to run on it, and even Microsoft. If that happens, then you may be able to choose the technology and then run the operating system. But until, that is sooner or later, that'll probably happen.
We didn't talk about kiosks much, but kiosks are a really interesting conversation. In the States, lots of them. Over here, growing slowly. And, you kind of have a kiosk already, right? And that's
so I've always said that, because what's the definition of a kiosk?
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't have to be something on a stand, but quite frankly, I do have a stand for this.
Yeah.
And I can make this a kiosk when I'm there. And so that is a whole nother. So it's quite clear we're going to have another conversation.
Another episode, yeah.
So Chris, I really appreciate your coming on to this pre-holiday, and we'll see what you get on your wish list there. The drone, maybe.
I'm waiting for my drone, Rob. I'll be very sad if it doesn't arrive by today.
Well, I'm going to send a note out and say to Callum McPherson that perhaps he should be sending you a drone for all the shout-outs you did for him, because you changed his life, right? But we'll do that. But Chris Fletcher with Tech on Toast, and thank you for joining us on Tech Bites. And I'm looking forward to having many more conversations with you in the future and comparing notes. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Rob, and take care, everyone. Have a lovely holidays.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tech Bites, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.